Hello again, good morning. We're on chapter 6 of our book, The Snow Merchant. Chapter 6 is called Letty Peppercorn Brews Tea, and she's just realised she's got these beautiful snow diamonds and she's going to be very, very rich, but everyone's so cold, so it's time for her to brew some tea. Letty went to the kitchen to make the brews. The goggler and Noah followed her to the door. Noah was there to help. The goggler was there to haggle. 3, she cried. No, ma'am. 2 then. I said no. You won't miss 2 tiny handfuls of snow, said the goggler, her eyes as big as a puppy's. I'll haggle later, said Letty. I'm busy now. The goggler's eyes narrowed. I'm trying to offer you a deal. Well, I'm trying to make the tea and you're not helping. Letty lit the stove and put the water on to boil. She sighed, suddenly feeling exhausted. What is it you want? 1 handful, the goggler declared. My final offer. I mean, what do you want in your tea? Said Letty. The goggler scowled and muttered something in Bohemian. Peppermint, she said, and don't forget the rum. The inn wobbled a little on its stilts as she stamped all the way back to her armchair. Whew, her temper could bring the whole house down, said Noah. And she didn't even say please, said Letty with a scowl. Are you sure you want to leave her in there with all the snow? Oh, forget about her, Noah. She can't do anything with the snow merchant still there. Let's make tea. That's what we need. Bounding over to the tea jar, she popped off the lid. It was empty. She showed it to Noah despairingly. Try this, he replied, and she looked on in amazement as fresh tea leaves grew and unfurled from his stalk. He picked them and handed them to Letty. It'll kick the cold out of us. Letty looked at the leaves in her hand. But that's incredible, she said. Noah, that's just stupendous. He's just managed to grow her some tea leaves. If you want more, just ask, Noah said. His flower blushed red and he quickly turned away to hide the petals. So they made tea and Letty gave her orders. Line up the mugs, please. Turn on the stove. Don't spill the milk. Noah did everything with a half smile on his face, even when she told him off for letting his icicle beard drip into the cups. Do you really have to defrost everywhere? She said, only half cross. You are too, Noah laughed. That's true. Letty's nose was dripping, her bones were aching, and she could feel the ether seeping out of her toes. Just then Periwinkle came back through the window, the note and the shillings gone. Dar had got her message and his money. Bring Periwinkle down here, would you, Noah? He needs his dinner. Noah looked at Peri for a bit, and then he said, This bird must be important to you, seeing as you can't leave the house. Letty stared at the boiling water in the pan, feeling a spike of shame. How do you know that? Noah stroked Peri's feathers. I read the note from your ma, he said simply. There was silence. Letty searched for something to fill it with. Oh, be careful with Peri, she said suddenly. Sometimes he pecks. Noah picked him up, gasping. Whew, and he weighs a ton. He does not, Letty flared. He does, said Noah, eyes bright. Maybe you overfeed him. I feed him just right, thank you very much, she huffed. Only teasing, said Noah. Sorry. Letty knew from his eyes and his smile that Noah had just been joking with her, but she wasn't good with jokes. She got angry, and before she knew it, she'd said something or thrown something that she shouldn't have. Well, he's sick, if you must know, she said, trying to keep her temper. Can't you tell? Reaching for Periwinkle, the pigeon, she put him by a dish of carrot peel where he began to peck slowly at his dinner. His beak is cracked, his feathers are grey, and he can't move his feet. Soon he'll be too heavy to fly. She stirred the mugs and fished out Noah's leaves. What's wrong with them? Noah asked gently. He's petrifying, said Letty. That means that he's turning into stone. You see how grey he is? Noah nodded. But why? Well, said Letty, my mum was an alchemist, and Dar says that she made periwinkle from a pebble she found on the beach. She plopped the pebble in her cauldron, threw in some alchemicals, and pulled out a pigeon. Noah's eyes shone. I thought the alchemists were just interested in selfish things like making gold from lead. But making life, that's even more amazing than diamonds falling from a cloud. Well, said Letty, now the alchemicals are wearing off, just like the ether. That's right, said Letty. No alchemy works forever. You can change something, but sooner or later the time comes when it changes back. And that's what's happening with Periwinkle. She turned to the pigeon. Don't worry, Perry. Even if you turn to stone, you'll still be my joint best friend. Joint best friend, said Noah, a smile on his lips. Periwinkle and who? Well, you wouldn't believe me, said Letty defensively. My other friend isn't a person either. Well, who is it then? Said Noah. The wind. Another child, a child from Barter, might have sniggered. But Noah had a plant growing out from his shoulder, so to him it didn't seem so strange that Letty was friends with the wind. He shrugged, and then his eyes went wide. Letty, you could pay an alchemist to cure Periwinkle, he said suddenly. Stop him turning back into a pebble somehow. You could afford it. You're rich now. Maybe, said Letty, and a tiny hope flared inside of her like a flame. She felt a little warmer for a moment. But it's one of those laws of the universe, isn't it? Nothing stays the same. Things change. She fell quiet and gazed out of the window to the town huddled against the wind, a place of brine and blubber and beer, a place she had promised Dar never to go. There was mystery in that town. There were ships setting off to faraway places, and others coming back with wonder and miracles. But Letty wasn't allowed near them. And now a miracle has finally come to me, she thought, at long last, just when I needed it most. The tea is ready, said Noah. Letty jolted from her daydreaming and turned around. The heat of the kitchen had changed him a little. With his coat off and his hood down, she felt like she saw him more clearly. She saw his goodness, his kindness, and wisdom. And suddenly she thought, I want Noah to be my friend. And Letty wondered how she could make that happen, because she had never made friends with someone before. Did she just ask? Is this what she had to do? She didn't want to just say it outright, for what if he said no? What then? Oh, Letty Peppercorn, you stop going red this instant. Well, she said all of a sudden, I'm Letty Peppercorn, and I'm very pleased to meet you. Noah looked at her puzzled. Yeah, I know, he said. For a second, Letty thought about boiling her head in the saucepan. It had all gone terribly wrong. But Noah smiled at her in his shy way, and she knew he understood. Letty Peppercorn, he repeated. I'm Noah, and I'm pleased to meet you too. Letty nodded, wiped her hands on the apron, and turned to the mugs. Well, she said, I'm thirsty. Letty brought the mugs, and Noah brought the spoons, and together they took them to the table. The room was dark, and it seemed to Letty full of secrets. No one had bothered to relight the fire. The walrus and the gobbler were huddled deep in whispers. The snow merchant stood by the rug, watching the snow glitter. It struck Letty as strange that he was so fascinated by something he had just given away, as if it were nothing. Then Letty lit the lamps, and the darkness fled, taking the secrets with it. The guests clustered around the steaming tea. This better be hot, sniffed the gobbler, big eyes blinking in search of her spoon. Have a sip and see, said Letty. She was expecting compliments. A compliment is when you say something good about something. She was expecting compliments, so she was very surprised when the old lady started to scream. Ow! Outrageous! Shrieked the walrus. Scandalously outrageous! Shrieked the gobbler. Oh, scandalously, outrageously awful! Shrieked the walrus, not wanting to be outdone. Is it too hot? Asked Letty, embarrassed. In reply, the two ladies stood up and threw their spoons across the room. Not the tea, gasped the walrus. "The spoon! The spoon!" She pointed. Letty's eyes followed her finger. 2 brown sticks lay on the floorboards. Oh, yes, Letty said at last. "That's been happening for a while." "What sort of inn is this, where you give people sticks instead of spoons?" spat the gobbler, magnifying her glasses to examine them. "Calm down," said Letty. "They're just sticks. You don't need to scream at them." But they were spoons," said Noah, blinking his green eyes at the stick he held. "I carried them from the kitchen. This one had a horse's head on the handle." "Well, now it's just a stick. Don't worry. The same thing happened last autumn to all the knives." "This is not the standard of service to which I am accustomed," said the walrus. "I demand an apology and an explanation and a replacement spoon." "Well, all we have left are forks," said Letty. She sighed, looking at the sticks and the tea splattered everywhere. It was going to be a nightmare to clean up, let alone explain. "Well, then where is my apology and an explanation?" the walrus grumbled. Letty was too preoccupied with the spoons. She shook her head and frowned at them. "It doesn't usually happen like this," she said. "I wonder what it was that changed them back so quickly." "It was the boy," said the snow merchant suddenly, and everyone turned to look at him. "Me?" said Noah. The snow merchant chuckled. "You were carrying them, weren't you?" "But I didn't do anything," Noah protested. Oh, Letty suddenly realised. "Of course you didn't. It was your stalk." "Ah, you've worked it out at last," said the snow merchant. The boy held the spoons too close to his stalk, and all those spoons suddenly remembered that they used to be twigs. "Oh, so that's why it happened so suddenly," said Letty. "I never knew that." She thought of poor Periwinkle and decided to keep him in the kitchen until she found a way to stop him perching on any slate stone roofs. He might petrify back to a pebble in an instant. "Oh, I'm sorry I ruined your spoons, Letty," said Noah, looking guilty. "Oh, don't be," said Letty. "It just happens. My ma made these spoons like she made the whole inn. She used alchemy, and all that cutlery came out of an old cauldron." "Ah, I see," said the walrus. "It's quite a long story," sighed Letty. "Years long, in fact." "Well, at 12 o'clock the ether will wear off and the room will no longer be cold," said the snow merchant, looking up at the clock hands as they twitched towards midnight. "Tell us the story, Letty," said Noah, "if it can make us forget the cold for 10 minutes. It'll be a tale worth telling." "All right," said Letty, "as long as you listen and don't interrupt. Da told me this story. He used to tell it all the time, and it would be better if he was here because he tells it perfectly. I can just remember the words." Letty began drawing up the story from her memory like a bucket from a well. Da's words were hazy at first, but they became clearer and clearer until she could almost hear him. It was the Da of long ago, the Da who used to sit by her bed and tell Letty about her incredible ma. Her incredible ma who was coming back any day now. Da never told stories anymore, and he had stopped saying that ma was coming back. "Letty Peppercorn, stop dithering and start talking." "It all begins with a girl who just couldn't make up her mind," said Letty. "Her name is Teresa. She's my ma." That's the end of the chapter.